Hi everyone, this is Stanley
Otito.
and we have a special couple here with us, the Masseys. They're going to introduce themselves in a minute, but I just have to say thank God for technology because we have been trying to get them on the couch for a while. A very unique story. I'm sure you guys will find out. Um, and thanks to technology, we can do this. We're in three different locations. You can't tell from the pictures behind us, but we are in three different locations. But I'll let them introduce themselves and we can get started.
Okay.
All right, should I go first?
Go first.
I'm Mary Massey. I'm a lifestyle and business coach. And
I'm Craig Massey. I'm a food scientist.
Mhm.
Ooh,
And,
nice.
and jumping in on that, how long have you guys been married and how long have you guys known each other?
Do you want to do the math first?
okay, we've been married 20 years.
Woo!
Actually, can you believe it's been 20 years?
20 years.
20 years. But we got married in 2002, but we met in 2000. So we basically knew each other for a couple of years.
22 years, yeah.
Yeah, 22 years.
Yeah, we dated for 9 months before I proposed. And then we were engaged for another year and a quarter before we got married.
Yeah.
20 years. Whoa. Okay. Now, on the couch, we normally bring people who have certain elements of, multiculturality, interculturality. And so I know, Craig, you're as Caucasian as they come, even though you normally say that, there are people who are more Caucasian than you. And I know that Mary is of Hispanic ethnicity heritage. If we're going by the US Census designations, tell me about it.
Yes.
Because I know that there's all sorts of history behind that as well. But how has this impacted your communication, right? Being of two different cultures, as it were. So tell us a little bit about that. How was it through the early and the mid years of marriage, seeing as it's been 20 years?
Yes. So do you want to answer that?
So I grew up here in New Jersey. As you mentioned, I am from a Caucasian family, but my dad is from Jamaica. So we did have some all throughout my life and throughout my parents' life, we've been exposed to many different cultures. And when we had met, we actually met online, and I remember Mary had a post, her personal ad said was in the other category. Like, how when you have a personal ad, you list what ethnicity you're from, and it said other, and I'm like, what kind of ethnicity is other? Like, what could she possibly be?
Not from this world.
Not from
this world.
Love it.
So when I reached out to her and we started corresponding with each other, I found out that she was from Peru, right? And but with a very diverse heritage there, coming from there. So it was definitely, I've always been one that's been interested in other cultures. So that was part of the attraction that I had to her is, I wanted to learn more about her family, more about her heritage, her food, of course, right? Peruvian food is awesome.
The best.
And I actually wound up going with her down there a couple times while we were dating and engaged, and shortly after we were married, to visit her family and see what their culture was like. So it was always, there are always challenges with when you're in a relationship with somebody who grew up in a different culture with different norms. But as long as you both go into it willing to learn from each other and learn about each other's past and each other's heritage, it's actually a mutually beneficial thing.
Yeah, I feel like Craig definitely embraced it. My upbringing was very a little chaotic because I lost my mom very young. So I lived both here in the US and in Peru, and he had a lot more stability. I didn't have any real stability growing up. So in terms of the culture and the family, I never really had like a place that I felt that I really belonged. So for me to even to this day, I don't really talk to my family too much. A lot of them are far away. So it's hard. It's tough when you have been in different countries all the time and there's no real sense of like, okay, what's real home? We lost everything when we were young. My mom, after my mom passed away. So I didn't really have any real connection to a place. So I had to basically develop my own culture, really. So I wanted him to answer that question first, because like when we raise our kids, there's no real like culture per se, whereas other people who may be other Peruvians or other Puerto Ricans, they have a nice tight community of either their family members, or they go back and forth to visit family a lot. I never did that. So that's why, we basically just came together and we started this thing together. But I think it's just our own. It's kind of unique in that sense, because he doesn't have a big family either.
I do have a very good example of how we've compromised in terms of learning each other's cultures, and it has to do with Christmas. So Mary's family traditionally on Christmas Eve, they stay up till midnight and they open up the presents Christmas Eve before going to bed.
Because that's what Jesus opened.
That's when Jesus. And for me and my family, we would always wait until Christmas morning to open up our gifts. So when we first started having children, Mary's like, no, I want them to open up gifts Christmas Eve. And I said, no, I want them to have that anticipation and open them up Christmas morning. So we compromised, and like Mary's family, her sister will come over for dinner typically on Christmas Eve. The kids will stay up late and they'll open up the presents from Mary's side of the family. And then Christmas morning, we'll open up the presents from my side of the family.
And my side is only my sister and her husband and her 2 kids. Basically, that's it. But on his side, of course, his sisters and the parents, when they were both around. So, it was nice for the kids because they got to open gifts the night before on Christmas Eve, the way it should be done. And then on Christmas Day. So,
I love it. That is such an amazing story of compromise. And it just has to do with a sweet holiday as well, right? So.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's an amazing story. And I like the wisdom in there, the best of both worlds, as it were. I know my kids, they would like that option of open it a day early, but anyway. So we're going to actually we're thinking about what's the role of, you guys are people of faith. We actually met at church.
Yeah.
And we just want to ask, how has your faith played a role in your staying married together happily? And specifically, have you ever questioned your faith?
Before we answer, you and I actually met doing high school mentoring at church.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Remember? Yeah.
Yeah. I remember. I remember.
Just for a little more information for your viewers.
Yeah.
Go?
Yeah. So for me, faith has always been a huge part of everything that I do. Everything. Even before we started the video, you're like, how do you get all this energy? And I say it's by the grace of God. So I always have that in the back of my mind. Like a lot of things, even like I pray all day. I wake up with gratitude. I always say, thank you, Father, for this day. And these are all things that were instilled in me from a young age from my dad, because my dad was like that. He would sneeze and give thanks. He was a man of faith, and he would always call himself an imperfect Christian, because at the end of the day, like we all fall short, but it's God knows our heart. And I feel that when you come into a relationship, with me, when I had my personal ad, I wanted a Christian man. I wanted somebody who came from a good family. So those were very important qualities for me to have when the time came for me to get married and have my kids, because I knew that I would have the best that I could possibly have for myself and for my children. And a lot of it is because we do love God and we make him the center of everything. At least, I do. No matter what I'm doing, if I'm tired, I listen to that voice inside of me. I always ask for guidance. And it's also helped me tremendously in letting go of the things that I can't fix. Right. So the stress we live in an environment now where everything is anxiety and stress and all these different troubles in the world. But with us, even during the time when Craig had lost his job, we never lost faith. He was unemployed for 8 months, I think it was. We were unemployed, remember? And it was, a lot of people would have been like, oh man, the mortgage, the car payments, or this, or that. And we're like, it's going to be okay. It's fine. Because we have that trust. And I think that really helps us to not be too concerned with whatever other troubles might plague a marriage. Right? What do you think?
No, I agree. Like I also grew up in the faith. My family was very, very strong in instilling in me the importance of having faith in Jesus. And when I saw her personal ad, as she was saying, with the fact that she was looking for somebody, she specifically said she was looking for a man that was a Christian man in a personal ad. That really caught my attention because you don't really see that too often in those personal ads online. This was back in 2000.
Yeah.
It was back, when everything was free online, when you didn't have to pay on eHarmony or Match or something like that. It was just like on AOL. And we, as Mary mentioned, we try to instill that in our children as well. Our daughter is away at college right now, and I know that if we hadn't, instilled in her or shared with her our faith and instilled in her that trust in God, that I would not feel as comfortable as I do right now, sending her away to school.
Yeah, she conducts herself in a very good way. She knows how to pick her friends, and it's important, especially in this day and age when you see all kinds of things going on in college, and we can just rest easy when she says, "Oh, I'm going to go do this," and we're like, no issues. So we're grateful for that.
Yep.
I like that response because, and this testament of your daughter, I think before Otito and I had started having kids, this was always my biggest fear. You listen to the news, and that was then. I feel things have gotten progressively worse now.
Yeah.
You look, and that was my biggest fear, as in that how would I help? How will I raise a child in this kind of world? And at the time, God was like, trust me. At the time, that was a trust me. And just hearing your story though, that kind of says, okay, we're not there yet. We haven't got in college yet, but it's encouraging to me to say, okay, this is an example of what can happen. Because I'm telling you, I'm already turning gray, and the guy's he's not out of middle school yet.
In middle school. But then they say like middle school is the worst.
But that kind of brings me to my next question. So,
well, Stanley, you had asked about have we ever questioned our faith?
Yes.
Personally, I want to say no. I believe and maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't, but I believe as a husband, I think there's this natural tendency to be concerned about things, about supporting your family, being there for them, making sure that they're well taken care of, and that they have that foundation to go out into the world for your children and keep the faith and thrive. So there's always that sense of like, you have all this responsibility on you, and you have to keep on going. But in terms of how I think my faith actually helps me in that regard, right? Because every time I feel that pressure of life, my faith and my wife remind me that it's all in God's hands to begin with. Like, we can't control that. We can't control everything, right? So I believe just recently on one of the sermons, they mentioned that you have to bring your cares to God and kind of lay them at the altar, right? And that's what resilience is about. It's like you don't have to stand up and be the Superman all the time, right? You bring all the cares of your family to God, you leave them with Him, and then you go about your life, because you're not built to have all that stress on you all the time.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you.
Because I want to, we might cut this out, we might leave it then. But this is of question your faith. Let me give you an example. So I have a close cousin that her husband just passed, right? And he died on his birthday, and they were born again Christians, And the question she had for me was that why did God do this to her? That they pay their tithes, they believe, there's no why. So when I say question your faith, I didn't have an answer for her. I told her, I don't know, I'm not God. But
Right.
What has happened to you is unfortunate. It's not fair, and I didn't have words to tell. But that's what as in that type of loss where for a second now, she's still in the faith, because you once you've been with God, you don't turn back. You're better off with Him, as painful as it is. But in that moment, she almost felt afraid to acknowledge that kind of like she was angry at God that, God, why did you do this to me? You know, so as a Christian, I mean, I don't think that's wrong. I mean, we need to acknowledge our feelings so we can leave it at his feet, you know,
Right.
where I'm coming. So that was where I was coming from, as in like a loss or disappointment, saying like, God, why? I will still serve you. You know, but Lord, I'm hurting here, you know.
And that's human. I believe that that's human. When you have a close relationship with someone and something happens between the two of you, then you ask the question, like, why did you do this? And I feel that it's okay to question in that regard. You know, why not? God wants us, I believe, to be as honest and truthful as possible, not to worship and pray, you know, inauthentically. You know what I mean? So if you're hurting, then be honest and say, yes, you know, this happened and I'm hurting because this happened. Of course, grief is a lot to deal with, and there are all the different stages of it. But in the beginning, yeah, you are going to be upset, angry, you know, questioning God's will, because we don't see what's around the corner. I always say, all we see is what's down the street. We never see what's around the corner, right? And you have to walk down the street to be able to see what is there for you. So as somebody who's lost so much, I can relate. You know, I can relate. I lost my mom at a young age. I lost my dad, who was everything to me after my mom passed away. You know, and it's hard because you do question, okay, I lost my anchor, here I am. But at the same time, God always has a way of pulling you back in because the foundation is there. You know, it's like if you come out of anger and out of disappointment and you stay in that, that's not a good thing, because you can be a believer, a born again Christian, who can easily turn completely the other way because things didn't work out for you as a Christian, but you're making it all about you and not about what God has in store for you. And I think that's a very negative way to look at things. Yes, be in your hurt and your pain, question things, but know that you came to this for a reason. You know, you came to God for a reason, and he has your back no matter what. And the thing is, like with me, is like, I know I'll see them again one day, you know, so I rest easy in that. I rest easy knowing that I will see my parents again one day. And whether it's sooner rather than later, it doesn't matter. I know that God had a will for things to go the way that they did, and I'm not going to question it, you know, but it's a process.
Yeah. Thank you. This is so like enlightening, even for me, from over here. Because I lost my mom 2020 during the pandemic. So it was so sudden, and I can imagine, like, it's like I had never experienced a loss like that before. So hearing you say that gives me a lot of comfort.
It takes years, you know, we never get over it. We just learn to live and go on without it, right? For me, it's been, I don't even know how many years. I lost my mom in 1985. I lost my dad over 15 years ago. And, you know, I lost my mom at a young age, but with my dad, I still get the urge to call him, right? Because we would talk 3-4 times in a day. We had such a close relationship. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I had him for as long as I had him. But of course, I'm going to miss him. I still miss him. I still hear his voice sometimes in my head. And I'm grateful that I remember what that sounds like. I don't remember what my mom's voice sounds like.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful that I remember what my dad's voice sounds like. And if I want to watch a video and my dad is in it, you know, I can see that. I can see him speak. I can see him move. Whereas with my mom, not so much. So what I say to people who were blessed enough to have their parents for a lot longer, you know, cherish that. Like, you know, I know that it's hard when you're going through it and you're still grieving, but it can give you a little bit more peace knowing that you did have them for a long time and you do have these amazing memories, you know, and in a way you're more blessed than other people who didn't have that.
Thank you.
Wow,
yeah,
that's deep.
So now we're going to talk about values, and I feel like you can't talk about culture without values. I heard Craig say at the beginning, norms, you know, the things that people grew up with. And so my question for you is, what values around marriage and parenting did you both bring into the marriage, and has that changed over the years? You know, because it's 20 years, I'm still saying 20 years. Yeah. So has that changed over the years? And in addition, before you got married, did you ever talk about it from like a cross-cultural perspective? Did you realize that this was going to be a thing of two different cultures and it might impact things? Did you have those conversations?
do you remember what we talked about before getting married in terms of our values? So a little bit of a behind the scenes for our when we were dating, right? And we were talking about getting married and having a family, we talked about children. And at the time I said I wasn't really interested in having children. And Mary was like, why not? I'm interested in having children. And I said, well, because no matter how good you raise them, you never know how they're going to turn out, right? Well, I had some experience with, family members who were raised great and then just didn't turn out quite right, right? Even though they were raised in a great situation. So, I personally didn't know if I wanted to have children or not, but we had this conversation over many different times, and eventually I came around to being like, yes, I want to have children. Mary was very interested in starting a family. So we went on to have two children.
Yeah.
That's a big one. That's a
It
big
is.
one, right? Because people can kind of go their separate ways, because that's a huge value in terms of, do you want children? Do you not want? So to hear that you both kind of overcame that, that's amazing, right? And typically you don't, I don't want to say typically, but I guess each partner could decide between themselves. But it's interesting to hear that you, Craig, were the one saying you didn't want.
Yeah.
But Mary, tell us how you convinced him, or how you both came to, agree on this huge value.
I just basically said, yeah, I want to have kids.